Hey guys, so it's been a while since I made a video like this, but I wanted to just sit down and give my overall thoughts on Dragon Ball Legends as it stands on April 29th, 2023, because that's the day that this video is being recorded. So before we get into this discussion, if you guys have been watching my videos for any reasonable amount of time, you'll know that I am always honest with letting you guys know my thoughts and feelings regarding anything about this game. So for example, if a character is not performing at the level I would hope for, then I am very clear and upfront about that. If a celebration is lacking and I don't think it's as good as it should be, I am very clear and upfront about that. So just, and on that note, just go back and look at my 4th anniversary discussion videos and you guys will see what I'm talking about. But on the other hand, if Legends does something good, like they design a character very well or a celebration is very good, I am vocal about that as well. So I'm not always Mr. Negative all the time, but I'm also not Mr. Positive all the time either. My commentary and what I say, my disposition, they're strictly dictated by my thoughts and impressions on the game. I try to be as objective as possible. Of course, I have biases in terms of the characters I like, but my feedback regarding the game, I think I would like to imagine is pretty unbiased. So I will never intentionally clickbait you guys, and that is something that I take very seriously. I am a YouTube user just as you all are, and I know what it feels like to be clickbaited, so I understand that you guys don't like to have your time wasted, and that is why I always try and be as upfront as possible with my titles and my thumbnails, so you guys know pretty much exactly what you're getting into when you click on one of my videos, with the exception, of some clearly joke videos, right? So with that being said, today we are going to be discussing my thoughts on the current state of the game. And obviously with me being mostly someone who is focused on PvP, this discussion will be focused on PvP environment of the game and where we could potentially see the game go from here. Because I do believe that right now, honestly, at this current moment, we are at a pretty important crossroad in the game's lifespan. And I think whatever actions they take in the near future could end up dictating the long-term health of this game. So the most important thing to discuss, because whenever I make a video like this is always the thing that dictates the discussion the most, is of course power creep. But at this point, right, we're about to enter the 5th year anniversary, so we are almost 5 years into this game here. We have reached a stage of power creep where units aren't simply power creeping other units on the basis of stats alone. And to me, this sort of stopped with the release of Beast Gohan. I think Beast Gohan, when he released, he sort of reset the game. Not only just in the terms of him just being like by far the best character that they've ever released, but him as a character, he was all encompassing in terms of the mechanics that he brought to the table. He pretty much had access to every single mechanic you could have asked for at the time, right? He was able to nullify cover change with ridiculous consistency. He was able to recover his vanishing gauge pretty often. He was able to go type neutral. He could gain multiple levels of card draw speed. He could gain endurance. He could destroy enemy cards. He had universal cover change. I mean, I could just keep going on and on about this guy's kit. He was just a unit that was able to do everything, right? And so I remember thinking to myself, and I'm sure a lot of you guys were also thinking this to yourselves as well, where do we go from here, right? This guy's already able to do everything. So what path can they take to outdo this guy? And so what ended up happening, because we are now, 6 months after that release? 7 months? Something like that. He's been out for a while now. So what ended up happening was, and I do think this design philosophy started to take form back with the release of Ultra Gogeta Blue at the end of December, is they sort of started giving all of these characters identifying traits, unique mechanics that would allow them to stand out from the rest of the game. And what this did is, they would essentially make up new abilities for characters to have, so as to not directly power creep the rest of the game directly, but rather to approach the issue from a different angle while still making each character have a reason to be used, even if they aren't just a strictly better version of an older character. And the main reason I wanted to even make this video in the first place is because I've seen a lot of negativity surrounding a lot of the recent character releases in this game. And I'll just be completely honest and upfront with you guys about this. This is something that's been going on for a long time, right? I mean, you take a look at pretty much any point in history of this game, there are always going to be people that are unsatisfied or displeased with the current state of how the PvP environment is. They don't like the current best characters in the game. They find it annoying to play in the game, whatever the reason is. But I think I've been playing this game since beta. I've been in contact with the community since I started doing YouTube pretty much, which was back during the first year anniversary. This has been one of the more negative environments that I've seen the community be in. And I think a lot of this has to do with this change in design philosophy that the design team has implemented, where they are going down the path of giving each of these characters a unique trait. Now, there's a big positive and a big negative when it comes to this. Before we go into that, I want to just go through every single banner that dropped since Gogeta Blue came out, because again, that's really when this philosophy started. And then we'll go through the banners, and I'll sort of like look at each character that came out this year. Basically, all the characters that dropped this year, pretty much, right, up until the end of April. And I'll talk about what their unique traits are, and basically my thoughts on how they affect the game individually. All right, so of course, to start things off with, we got to take a look at the Ultra Gogeta Blue banner. This was, again, I think really where they started heavily pushing this philosophy of giving each character like a super mega unique ability. Of course, Gogeta Blues is his unique gauge, which gives him the ability to basically self-cover change. He just counters the next blast, like the next blast card, or the next blast-based blue card, or blast-based green card, projectile, whatever you want to call it. And it's, of course, an extremely, extremely powerful mechanic. And I definitely have seen a lot of negativity surrounding this guy's mechanic in particular. I did a video on my top 10 most hated characters of all time in this game, and you guys can go look at that comment section of that video. A lot of comments are mentioning Ultra Gogeta Blue. I have my own opinions about this guy's ability. I definitely understand that I am in the minority when I say that I definitely don't think it's not an annoying mechanic. I know it is an annoying mechanic, because I've found myself often in a lot of different situations where I just simply can't attack. Like, you end up with a full hand of blast cards against Gogeta. You end up with 3 blasts and a blue card, or you're ending up with 3 blasts and a projectile green card. Like, there's not much you could do in that situation. You just have to sort of bite the bullet and eat the unique gauge. So I understand that that's a very, very annoying situation to be in. And this is going to get to my point. And my point is, when they create abilities like this, it's not just going to be about how good is the ability. It's not going to be about, is this ability too powerful to be included in the game? How do we balance the character around this ability? The number one thing as a game designer, as a game developer, that they should be thinking about when creating characters like this, and this is going to be something that's going to be mega super important going forward, and this is basically the entire point of this video, is they need to be thinking, how fun is this ability? As a game, the number one priority of the development team should be, how can we make the most fun game possible? This Gogeta's unique gauge, I've seen a lot of people really, really not like the design of this Gogeta's unique gauge, and the only takeaway I can see from that is that people just don't enjoy either fighting against the Gogeta. I mean, I'm assuming that most people, when they're talking negatively about the ability, they just are talking about fighting against the character as opposed to using the character, because when you use the character, you're winning most of the time, right? But even as somebody who's using the character, I could tell you for sure that there's been a lot of times where I use a character like Gogeta, and it's just like, it feels like the game is just handing you the win a lot of times. And to me, as somebody who more so than not likes to win off of skill, likes to outplay my opponent and earn the victory, oftentimes I do feel like, okay, well, using this character is just sort of the game giving me an advantage in this area. And it sort of just doesn't feel good, right? Because if your opponent, again, finds themselves in a situation where they just have a full hand of blasts, and then Gogeta ends up literally one-shotting them from full HP because they couldn't do anything else like that, I could definitely understand why that doesn't feel good, right? As the person who just gets destroyed by this character that has like an uncounterable ability pretty much, right? So I think as we go through the rest of these characters on these banners that we're going to take a look at here, that's the number one thing I want to be taking a look at from the angle of how fun is this character's ability in the game. Is it so detrimental to the fun of the game that it could really end up hurting the game in the long run? I would argue that this Gogeta's ability actually does have that have the possibility to do that. This is basically a character that is able to fundamentally block and counter half of the game, right? I mean, the game is probably still more strike oriented than blast oriented, but blast characters have been making a massive sort of like a massive comeback, right? Pretty much since Vegeta and Trunks came out. Vegeta and Trunks came out, we got Gogeta, and then from that point forward, we saw a lot of consistent blast character releases. We saw some good Zenkais that were blast oriented, a lot of equipment that was really strong for blast characters. So they definitely have been making a concerted effort to power up a lot of the blast versions of characters that we've received and are getting in the future here. So it's tough. It's tough to really have a mechanic like this and to like legitimately say with a straight face that this is a fun addition to the game. It's tough. It's really tough. So I think that is what we're going to be doing when we take a look at these characters. But that's basically my thoughts on Gogeta here. Is it a fun mechanic to play against? No. Is it a fun mechanic to use, right? Those are the two angles we got to look at, from the angle of the person that's fighting the character and from the angle of the person that's actually using the character. From the person that's using the character, again, I would say most of the time, because you're probably at an advantage if somebody pops this gauge, it's probably fun. But for me, and I think a lot of other people as well can also vouch for this as well, there is some layer of, you know, am I really earning my win by using this, because it's such a stupidly broken ability. And so it kind of takes away the fun aspect from not only the person who's fighting the character, but also the person who's using the character. And it's going to depend on person to person, right? It's not everyone's going to feel that way. All right, so the next banner we got was the LF Android 17 banner here. So this character has, I'd say actually a few defining traits. The first one is going to be, obviously, when he fills up his unique gauge, he gets a double vanish. Not really many other characters that have that at all. Like most of the characters will actually have to like activate a card or green card or blue card to get their vanish back, main ability. This guy, just once he gets his gauge filled up, he has 2 vanishes pretty much forever. And that is insanely powerful. That is absurdly good. The other defining traits this guy has, of course, Gogeta Blue also has the ability to nullify endurance when he activates his Rising Rush. This 17 actually removes enemy buff effects and attribute upgrades when they rush, which means that Gogeta cannot nullify the 17's endurance. Basically a nullification of a nullification, you know, the classic nullification of the nullification thing that we always joke about in this game. And then the third thing is this character does reduce enemies' arts power whenever they use a blue card or an ultimate, and then he heals the whole team. So a really strong character. I think when you take a look at this character and you're thinking to yourself, like, okay, is this guy fun to play against, and is he fun to use? I actually would say I think this guy is a pretty well-designed character, and I don't really think he's particularly toxic and unfun to fight or use. The double vanishing gauge can definitely be annoying, but I think a lot of that is determinant upon the person using the character actually being good with the character. And so if the game is creating mechanics like this that reward skill, I think that that is a definite positive for the character's design, right? In Gogeta Blue's case, there's not much skill involved, just eating a bunch of cards, and then all of a sudden you can just counter half the game, right? I mean, it's just dumb. So I think I would probably say that this guy is well designed, and he is, you know, pretty fun to play against and pretty fun to use, right? There's no really like toxic thing he's doing, really. So I would say that this is probably a very, very good release in terms of design, because it's not really he's not really providing any sort of toxicity to the environment of the game at all. All right, next we have Ultra Hits, who came out after LF17. Of course, I even have to say Ultra Hits defining mechanic is the time skip. I might be in the minority when I call the time skip not that toxic. I definitely could understand people that do think it is a toxic mechanic, because a lot of times all you do is you hit somebody once and then you just go into hit and time skip and you kill somebody, right? That's definitely an argument that you could use if you're somebody who's against the time skip being a fun mechanic. For me, I kind of view it half and half, right? There is an aspect of the time skip where you definitely have to be in the right spot and be in the right situation to be able to make the most out of the time skip. So you can't just sit in long range and then like all of a sudden just use a time skip, because if your opponent actually knows what they're doing, they can just hit you out of it, right? So you're going to waste it if that's what you're doing with it. So you have to kind of know how to use it. But I think once you are accustomed to using this character and you know when to use a time skip, you know when your opponent isn't going to be in a position to be able to interrupt it, then I think it's probably just the single most powerful mechanic in the entire game. Oftentimes you can end up taking out an enemy character just from full HP, even if a lot of times, like, again, I remember when this character, I was using him like for 70 plus matches in a row in the same season, I was killing full HP Beast Gohans with my time skip. Like, type disadvantage doesn't matter. It's just ridiculous. But on the other hand, I could definitely understand that it's really not fun to just get completely 100 to 0'd by a character when he's not even comboing you. Like, he just enters the battlefield, you're in a position where you can't do anything. Like, let's say you counter an enemy's tackle with a strike card, you go into hit and you just use the time skill, like, you just lose the fight. Right? So I will chalk this one up to a 50-50. I'll put half of it is toxic and half of it kind of is more on that skill-based level character, because there are ways to work around this. Like, a lot of the time, as somebody who's used hit a lot, if you end up tackling somebody and the enemy, again, counters your tackle with a strike card, then you just have a free time skip, right? So your enemy, knowing that, can intentionally eat your tackles because they know that you're trying to land the time skip, and then it becomes a mind game at that point. But I am, as a personal note here, I am somebody who does lean more towards the time skip being more of a skill-based thing. But I could definitely understand why people find it annoying to fight against. So again, I'll leave this up as like a 50-50. Is it fun to fight against? Not really. Right? Is the time skip fun to fight against? Not really. Is it fun to get 100 to 0 without you being able to actually retaliate? Not really, right? But is it fun to use? Oh, yes. It is fun to use. I will tell you right now, we are, again, almost 5 months into this year already, and this is easily my favorite character release this year. He's just incredibly fun for me to use, but I can understand on the receiving side that it might not be that great. All right, so moving on, we have Revival UI Goku and Master Roshi. I guess we'll start with UI Goku because I think Master Roshi has more of a unique mechanic than UI Goku. UI Goku doesn't really have that defining of a mechanic. I mean, he has the revive, which is not, of course, specifically unique to him alone, but it has been a decent bit since we had a revival character. And of course, with it being UI Goku, like such a hype character, it's kind of a big deal. But then also remember that he does gain cover null for a long, I think it's 40 counts of cover null or something he gets when he revives, and then he gets an extra level of card draw speed. So this guy has like ridiculous combo potential when he revives, and that might be what they were going for, right? Just a reviving character that just is ridiculously powerful when he revives. I haven't really ever felt like I was really in a toxic position when fighting against this character, and I never really felt like I was feeling bad, I guess, for my opponent when using this character. So overall, I would say he's not really a toxic character. I don't think he's really adding any sort of negative influences on the environment of the game. So I think I'm okay with the way that they designed UI Goku. Is he fun to fight against? Is he fun to use? I would say yes to both, right? Nothing particularly an issue there. Master Roshi. So this is, again, one of the other big new mechanics we saw introduced this year. This Master Roshi introduced the sealing mechanic with his Mafuba, which means that if you use this character's ultimate and he seals an enemy character, they are literally locked out of the game permanently until either Master Roshi is defeated or until the enemy team is down to just the sealed character left alive. At that point, the character comes accessible again and you can actually use the character, but at that point, you probably lose. Right? So I would probably say that the Mafuba as a mechanic is just a hair probably less good than Hit's time skip, because Hit's time skip, in my experience, most often probably ends up killing the enemy. I mean, there's instances where you get really unlucky with your hand, like it's a full blast setup or something like that, and just like you can't really do much with it. But it more often than not does end up just straight up killing the enemy, which again I think is just more powerful than this Roshi's sealing mechanic. But this is like right up there with the time skip in terms of how good it is. And I think as a non-Ultra, as a non-LF character, they probably were struggling quite a bit to balance this appropriately because of how strong it is. And as a result of that, Roshi himself is strong. Like, he does a lot of blast damage. His green card is really strong. His green card blue combo is pretty strong. But he's not, like, he has no cover changes. His defensive utility is pretty bad. Like, he has some weaknesses for sure. So I think in terms of like balance with this character in particular, he's pretty well balanced because of how powerful the Mafuba is in combination with him as a character himself not really being overly oppressive. Like, if this Roshi other than the Mafuba, like if he has a damage dealing character, like he got cover null, like he was just tearing through enemies, and he had the Mafuba on top of that, like yeah, he'd be very toxic. But I think they did a good job of balancing him appropriately, not making him too weak, but not making him too good, in combination with how good the Mafuba is. I actually wouldn't say this guy is particularly too toxic for the game. So again, in terms of fighting against this character, the Mafuba can definitely be annoying because it just completely locks out a character for the rest of the match. But a lot of times you have control over who gets locked out because he has to land the ultimate, and you have free reigns to switch into a character that you are comfortable with him locking out. So that is something that you have control over. And is he fun to use? Yeah, he's pretty fun to use, I would say. So I don't really have a major issue with him. The Mafuba can be annoying to deal with, but as a character, I don't really particularly have a massive problem with either of these units, UI Goku and then Master Roshi. So I think in terms of like how much of a toxic effect this banner had on the game, I don't think it's that bad. I think it's fine. Both these releases are okay. And I think, honestly, if we saw more releases like this banner, where we had a 1% Sparking who has a new mechanic, and we have a pretty powerful character with UI Goku. I know a lot of people still underrate this character a lot, the Rebel UI Goku. I think the game would be in a much better spot, right, than if we continue to get characters like Ultra Gogeta Blue and a character we are about to look at next here, which I guess we'll just get into, which is Ultra Rose. Yes, Ultra Rose, everybody's favorite unit here. So Ultra Rose, I mean, he doesn't really have like one super mega unique defining trait. The two that come to mind are the fact that he can ultimate up to 3 times a match, which I guess is pretty unique, right? We've already had some characters that could use ultimates multiple times per match, but it's only twice, right? So like Ultra Super Gogeta can ultimate twice per match. And then we had the green LF Trunks who could ultimate twice per match, but this guy can ultimate 3 times. So that could ramp up pretty insanely pretty quickly. And then, of course, he has just like the single best blue card ever, probably, right? This Rose. It's just way too strong. But the thing with this character is there's one thing I do want to mention here, and that is it's not specifically a unique thing tied to this Rose, but it's just the fact that he has so many ways to draw blue cards from his greens that he's just constantly drawing. Plus, of course, he's going to be able to draw blue cards just naturally as well. And the fact that his blue card removes, I think it removes buff effects from the enemy, that even characters that are typically immune to being afflicted by attribute downgrades and abnormal conditions can be afflicted by those status effects. So for example, Purple GT17, right? He's a character that typically cannot be afflicted by those things, but if Rose uses his blue card, first of all, on activation, he removes the buffs of the character, and then he applies the debuffs when the card hits. So he removes the buffs from 17, and then he hits 17 with the blue card, and 17 all of a sudden is afflicted by heavy bleed, afflicted by strong poison, and then he has a 40% chance to inflict paralysis. And that's where this character gets ridiculously annoying. The fact that he has a 40% chance to inflict paralysis means that you simply cannot eat the blue card at all, on top of the fact that it also is going to do like half your HP because of how hard it hits. So the fact that the blue card is a short animation on top of that means that you pretty much have a coin flip once you vanish this blue card, and things just become a mess because then you're just, 50% chance just to lose on the spot essentially. And overall, their decision to design this character's blue card like this, talk about if it's fun to fight against this character, if it's fun to use this character, I would say hell no to both of them. Hell no is it fun to fight this character, and hell no is it fun to use this character, at least for me. I do not particularly enjoy using this character. It doesn't really feel like he rewards skill-based play. You just collect a bunch of blue cards and you win the game. You paralyze your opponent cannot play the game, and then you proceed to win the game. All while building up your damage, all while building up your cover cut penetration, all while ultimating like 4 times per match. Yeah, I can understand why people have fun with this character because he's ridiculously overpowered, but for someone like me who, again, more so gets satisfaction out of actually some form of skill being used in this game, I do not particularly enjoy this character at all, using him. Fighting against him, I've seen a lot of complaints about this character. I would say that this Rose in combination with Ultra Gogeta Blue are the 2 most complained about characters that have released this year. Again, go back to my 10 most hated characters video in the comments section. This Rose, a lot of complaints. Him and Gogeta Blue have the two most complaints out of any character, I think. So it's releases like this, and this is sort of going to be the conclusion of the video. We'll go through the rest of the characters too, but these are the two main ones that I wanted to mention is Rose and Gogeta Blue. Gogeta Blue's mechanic, really cool. I think it's something unique for him and not something I really expect to see at all, maybe ever for the rest of this game. I'm sure it's going to come back eventually on a different character, but this is a really cool mechanic. I think the animations are really good. Of course, this is one of the most hyped releases of all time. But in terms of, is this a healthy release for the game? The answer is no. Over to Rose. Is this a healthy release for the game? Hell no. Hell no. And it just all comes down to what the point of the video is. And it's just, is this character fun to fight? The answer is no. Just straight up no. And if a character is not fun to fight against and you see and encounter that character every single match, like why play? I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Like, why continue to subject yourself to this unfunness if this is what you're going to be experiencing almost every single time you queue up into the game? By far, the most common team I encountered last season was Ultra Rose on Fusion Warriors. That means you're fighting this character and this character on the same team almost every single match. So it's just tough, right? It's just, how do you have fun with a game where the mechanics of the characters you're fighting against are not fun to interact with? And that's really, again, what I'm trying to get to in this video. Because if they are going to continue to give characters like Ultra Rose and Ultra Gogeta Blue these defining, unique traits, more so than how good they are, they really need to be thinking about how fun are these mechanics. Because if the mechanics are not fun, then what's the point? What's the point of introducing these mechanics if there's not some level of fun involved, right? Nobody enjoys getting paralyzed. There's not a single person that's like, yes, I'm paralyzed. I'm having a lot of fun right now. Like, because removing all control that you have over the outcome of the game is just not fun. Removing all control over the outcome of the game when fighting Gogeta Blue because you just so happen to draw a full blast hand is not fun. So I think there needs to be more consideration put into how fun are these new mechanics, and are we comfortable with people experiencing this every single match? Right. So just to quickly go through the rest of these characters, we have Purple Trunks, we have Red Cell. Probably not as defining traits on these characters because they are not LS or Ultras, but Trunks has the 2 cover rescues, which I think is pretty good. It's not a specific ability that's unique to him alone, but pretty powerful. I wouldn't really call this Trunks, toxic at all. I mean, he draws a blue card for the first card that you land, which I guess is pretty unique to him. But again, it's not like a toxic ability. I think he's fine. Red Cell, he's able to get his Vanish gauge back twice per match. First time from transforming, second time from using his main ability post-transformation. And he does have that pretty interesting healing ability. I think he's healing either 70 or 80% of the damage he takes from the first combo after transforming. That is definitely a unique thing to him. Wouldn't really call Red Cell toxic at all. I think he's a pretty fair character. He's doing a lot of strong things, but he's not like a toxic character who's like limiting your ability to play the game. So no real issues with either of these characters. Then we have Goku and Vegeta. I could definitely see people who do not like this character. I think they actually did a pretty good job of balancing this character. And I would go as far as to say that they might be a little bit quote unquote too balanced to the effect of them not being good enough. I think a lot of people are sort of starting to come to that same conclusion as well after using them for a while now. We've had a few weeks to play with them. I don't want to put this. They are good. They do a lot of things well. I think they might have been a little bit too hesitant to make them better just due to them not really knowing how the community would take to the preparation mode, the Transcendent Kamehameha mechanic. I think it is a cool mechanic. I really do think that they could do a lot in the future with the same mechanic on other characters. But they don't feel like they're able to compete at that like tippy top level with the rest of the game outside of their Transcendent Kamehameha mode. But in terms of like if it's fun to fight against them and if it's fun to use them, I actually do have a lot of fun using this character. I think even though they're not as good as I would have hoped, I still do really think that this character is very, very good, and I do like these. I think they are very fun. In terms of fighting against them, if this character goes into the preparation Transcendent Kamehameha mode, it becomes pretty annoying because you can't really do anything. Vegeta draws the countering green card. He destroys your whole hand. He's healing a ton. And it's just sort of like a slow ticking clock to your doom. But in order to get to that point, you have to work for the 3 tags. And I think, you know, sort of having a character like this that is, I like to call these characters questing characters, because you sort of have to go on a quest to get to the goal. And the goal in this case being the transcendent Kamehameha mode. So I kind of like this character. I don't really have a huge issue with you know, them being not as good as that they should have been, but in terms of them being fun to use and fun to fight against, I don't really have that big of an issue with this release. I'm not going to really comment too much on Ultra Kid Buu because he's not even out yet. All we've been able to see are his kit information. I will tell you though right now that we now know that he does have an AoE green card. And I will tell you right now that his AoE green card is going to be the single thing that I complain about the most, probably out of any of his abilities. His AoE green card is basically an AoE version of the android's green card. 17's green card that we complained about so much back a year ago when they released. This Kid Buu basically has an AoE version of that. Gives him 10 counts of cover null, gets a bunch of other abilities. He's able to lock in the enemy with his blue card, get his vanish back with his blue card. Like, this is going to be a very strong, and I am thinking he will be a pretty toxic release. We will see how they handle this, but Regen hasn't really had an opportunity to shine a lot, pretty much in the past 2 years or something like that. So if there's a tag that deserves the treatment that this Kid Buu is bringing to the table, then it sure is Regen. So again, I'm not going to judge this character too harshly because we haven't even used him yet. He's not even in the game available yet. So I'm thinking this might end up being a pretty bad release in terms of the health of the game, but we will see tomorrow when he releases. So the 2 big culprits, I guess, are Ultra Rose and Ultra Gogeta Blue. And as a conclusion, I'll just sort of repeat what I said throughout this video, is that the number one thing that they have to do moving forward, it's not just limited to balance. It's not just limited to how good these characters are. It's more important that they think about how fun is this mechanic. Is this mechanic severely limiting my opponent's ability to even play the game? That's why I've always thought this. I've always thought that the 3 biggest, like, terrible mechanics, the 3 worst mechanics in the game by far are no switching, paralysis, and feint. All 3 of those mechanics have the same thing in common. There is no counterplay. You can't all of a sudden just say, oh, he inflicted me with no switching. I'm just gonna not care about it. Like, there's nothing you could do. Like, you're just locked in. The enemy afflicts you with paralysis. Sometimes you're just not gonna be able to play the game. It's just RNG. You get feinted. The enemy switches into Gogeta Blue and rushes you. Like, what could you have done? Right, so I think limiting, what's the best way to say this? Limiting the no counterplay mechanics should be what they focus on moving forward. And I just think as a game that people are deciding whether or not they want to continue playing or not, based on the negativity I've seen surrounding this game recently with these recent releases, they really, really, really need to be considering the fun element of these characters with the new mechanics. Because once they add new mechanics like this, a lot of this is uncharted territory, right? We've never seen the time skip before hit. We've never seen the sealing ability before Roshi. We've never seen the preparation mode before this character. So before they create these new abilities, they really have to sit down and think about how fun are these abilities to fight against and use as well. So that's pretty much going to be this video here. I guess we'll see moving forward, especially as we head into the anniversary, how fun the mechanics of the anniversary characters are going to be. So let me know down below what you guys think about this discussion. Do you feel the same way as me? Do you feel differently? Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in the next one.